Welcome to the Wholesaling Inc. podcast. I am your host, Brent Daniels, and if this is your first time stumbling across us, welcome. You are about to experience the absolute number one best wholesaling podcast on planet Earth. And if you're one of our loyal listeners, one of our Rhino Tribe members, welcome back. Thank you guys so much for all the love and support. And most importantly, thank you so much for sharing the successes that you're having out in the marketplace by just listening to this podcast, taking the instruction that you get from this podcast and turning that into deals in your market. You know, we talk about on this podcast a lot about wholesaling virtually. Okay, what that means is basically you live somewhere, maybe it's a major market, and this happens a lot. You know, we talk to people that live in a major market and they feel like either because there's big companies that have just huge marketing budgets, or it's a place where there's a different real estate seminar every single weekend pumping new people into the industry. But for whatever reason, it's easier for some people in some bigger markets to work in smaller markets or virtual markets that don't have as much competition, or maybe the deals are just easier, or they have a home base there that they can easily sell to a lot of their cash buyers. Well, this is the perfect example. This interview that I'm going to have today is with Lauren Hardy. She is out of Orange County, California, but she virtual wholesales. Not only does she virtual wholesales, she's done over 40 deals this year. This woman is somebody that you really want to take notes on, because she is going to blow your mind with her processes, her mindset, and her ability to get deals. So with all that, I want to introduce the lovely Lauren Hardy. Say hello.
Hey, Brent, how you doing?
I am doing awesome. Welcome to the podcast. This is a while. Lauren and I have known each other for over 2 years. We've seen a lot of changes in each other's businesses, and this is exciting. It's exciting to have you on here. So why don't you give everybody a little bit of background of what you do before wholesaling, how'd you find it, and what's going on now?
Awesome. Well, so a little bit about me. I started in more corporate real estate. I was working in commercial real estate, working for just different companies. It was definitely like the 8 to 5 grind. And it was, before I had a kid, it was totally fine. I could handle it. I thought, I'm going to aspire to be like a CEO of a company one day. And as soon as I had my daughter, that changed. I realized it was so difficult. I was like commuting an hour there, hour back, working. So basically I wouldn't pick up my kid till like 6 o'clock at night. Right. And I'd see her for like an hour and then had to like bathe her and put her to bed. So it was really tough. I wanted more freedom. At the time, my husband, I'm actually now a single mom, but at that time, I was married, and my husband had a corporate job too. So neither of us had any flexibility at all. And it was my goal. I didn't care what I was going to do. I was going to have a more flexible career. And it could have been anything. I mean, I could have ran into anyone and said, hey, you should do this. This will make you money. And I would have jumped on it. It just so happened that my brother started flipping houses a couple years before me. And I thought, okay, I never thought to do what he did, but I was like, all right, well, you have a cool schedule. Tell me about it. So that got me into flipping houses. I started with some courses, the Norris Group had a course, and Mike Cantu had a really funny course. Old school guys. These are like some of the original, educators of our time. Before it just blew up. And I listened to their courses. I said, all right, I'm doing it. Like I went at it full speed. I started with direct mail, and my goal was just to like 2 houses. And so I started as a house flipper in the Southern California market. This was 2011. It was a lot easier at that time to flip houses based on where the market was. So I sent some mail. I got a deal. I think my first deal, the net profit was like 60 grand. And I was like, this was so easy. Like I just made more money then I did at my corporate job for a year, and I did this like on my lunch break, like literally like an hour a day of calling sellers back. I made my salary. So I was like, all right, let's keep doing this. So I went with it for about a year. I worked both. I had, my corporate job 8 to 5, and I would just on my lunch breaks talk to sellers, make offers, and I flipped like 3 houses that year. At that point, I was also pregnant while I was doing that with my second daughter. So I thought, okay, if I can like make enough money where I have some in savings, I have my salary in savings, like I'll quit when I have her and I just won't come back after maternity leave. Mm-hmm. So I did that. So that was my start. I'd also like to say I started with no money. Like I did not mean my ex-husband, he did not have any money at all. I started with a credit card. So I had I think like an $11,000 balance or something on my credit card, or a limit on my credit card. And I was like, all right, here's my investment.
Here's my marketing budget. Yeah.
Here's my marketing budget. Like, let's hope I can make this back. So yeah, I started with nothing, started with a credit card and some education, and it evolved. So I went from doing those deals. I started dipping into wholesaling. I was wholesaling in Southern California. These are mainly flip projects. And it got tougher. It got harder as the years went by. I was hearing from sellers, everyone, oh man, I get these postcards in the mail all the time, and I'm talking to 5 different investors, and I have also these agents knocking on my door. And, I realized that I really live in a pretty difficult market. And in Southern California, you have to be really competitive to be able to make it here.
Right.
And I think it's great that I got my start there because I learned to be very competitive, and that has put me ahead in the virtual markets I'm in. But it's very difficult when you're in a market like Southern California, say LA, OC type market, very high priced. Everybody wants to live there. You're not just competing with investors, you're competing with just regular people who have cash. There's Chinese investors that dump their money in California real estate. So just being able to say, oh, I'm a cash buyer and I can buy as is, isn't really that competitive.
Right.
Like, cool, so are you and like a million other people. So give me the highest price you can. And that price is like not something I can make money off of. So anyway, I read the writing on the wall and I decided to look into out-of-state markets. I have experience getting into 3 different out-of-state markets, all very different types of markets. So I feel like I have a very well-rounded experience with working virtually in different types of markets. So that's cool.
Well, it's really interesting, Lauren. You were talking about you have your daughter, you have your job, you have to pick her up at 6, you barely have time, and then you have your second daughter's coming, and you're like, okay, we got to figure this thing out. It's really interesting to me. A lot of people put on their walls or their dream boards or whatever in their mind, the big house, the car, the vacations. Not many people put on their freedom of schedule, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think if you ask a lot of the really, really, really successful people in whatever business, freedom of schedule is number 1. I mean, having that opportunity to decide, you look at your week and your month and everything, look at this and decide what you're going to do with it is a gift like no other. I am telling you, it is just absolutely incredible. And that's what essentially you were able to allow yourself to do with these big flips as you were starting out. I mean, this is 8 years ago. You're doing this in 2011, getting this going, starting this process. And it's absolutely incredible. And I agree with you. When you say, it's interesting, on this podcast, many people will say, well, there's not, we've said it a lot. It's collaboration, it's not competition. And you said, I'm really competitive. I think what you really mean there is how do you distinguish yourself and your offer and your process of purchasing properties from somebody else, right? Because if you don't distinguish it in a bigger market, if you're just cash as is and pay the closing costs, you're going to get beat by a drum because there's always going to be somebody like the Chinese or somebody else or some big company or somebody that wants to just live there that has cash. They've made a boatload of money in their career and they're tired of living in, Wisconsin, and now they want to live in Orange County. You know what I mean? So there is a big, I think that that's what you meant by competition. Is that right?
Yes, that is exactly what I meant by competitive. It's not like, oh, I'm looking over my shoulder. No, it is, I have a website, business cards, letterhead, I mean, polish, like everything about me is, we look like a real company,
Yeah,
you know,
legitimacy.
Legitimacy, right. You know, sellers want to know you're the real deal. I have a list, a new thing I've been doing is sending a list of the 2019 purchases we've done, you know, to just establish credibility.
Yep.
So you definitely, to be competitive, and the number one thing that, my God, so many people do not do is answer your phone or call sellers back within the same day.
Yep.
Sellers will call, and I've heard from so many sellers that they say, well, I called, you know, these other companies, but I still haven't heard back, but you called me right back.
Yep. Incredible.
Right?
That's like business 101.
Yeah. Like, you know, I mean, they can leave a voice. It's not a big deal that you didn't answer the call live, but just like call them back, send them a text, like be available, you know? So that's what I mean.
So then you decided you're going to go to, where'd you go? Nashville?
Nashville.
Oklahoma City.
And Tulsa.
And Tulsa.
Yeah.
Okay. And we won't get into the why and how of how you selected it, but let's talk about, let's give some instruction here. If somebody's thinking about going into a virtual market, what do you think are the most important things that they should know before making that decision?
Well, you should know what type of market it is. Like, what is the main play there? What are the buyers doing?
Right.
So if you're going to be a wholesaler, you want to think, okay, what is the end buyer's game? Like, are they flippers, like in California? Are they developers, like in Nashville, where they're knocking homes down, building two in its place? Or is it a renter's market? And that's the type of market where it's probably more lower price point market, and you're getting a lot of multi-unit buyers and hedge fund activity.
Yep.
So I would say I think of it as like the three end plays, and you want to figure out what market do you want to play in, what pond do you want to play in, what do you want to do? Do you want to have where you're maybe not doing volume, but when you do a deal, it's a big deal, and that would be more of a flipper or even better developer market? Or do you want more volume, where maybe your wholesale fee is like $7,000 to $10,000 each, but it's, you know, coming much more frequently? You're doing, you know, volume. You're doing maybe 5 to 10 deals a month. What do you want to do?
Got it.
So
I think that's crucial. You know, it's really interesting. Phoenix is not a great rental market. It's just not. What I mean by that, and same with, you know, Orange County for probably the same reason. But basically, the price versus what you get in rent is not going to make sense if you have traditional financing on it, right? It's not going to cash flow the way it will if you can buy a property for, let's say, $100,000 and it rents out for 1% or $1,000 or $1,200. You could buy a house in your market probably for like $600,000 that rents for $3,000 or something. You know what I mean? Like that number.
I'll give you an example. This house sold that I'm in for $745, and I'm renting, because I just sold my home, for $3,000 a month.
Right. There's a great example. It is. So guys, it's really, really important to determine when you're going into a new market, who are the cash buyers, because then you can start catering, and then you can start building your cash buyer database and know where they're at and where their attention's at and how to market them. If you're sending, hey, fix and flip these houses, when it's a primarily rental cash buyer, it's going to fly under the radar. But if you're talking about all the rental, all of the metrics when it comes to owning a rental, and you can communicate that effectively, you're going to sell those properties easier.
100%. And I do think when you're looking into a virtual market, or really if you're just looking to wholesale in your own market, you need to sort of reverse engineer it by going, what are the buyers buying? What prices are they buying at? Because then you know what type of sellers to target, and you know what types of offers to give out. Because if you're giving And I'll tell you, I did that in Oklahoma City at first. I was giving flipper type offers out.
Yep.
And realizing that, no, the name of the game's renters, rentals. So I didn't really know to like look at what could this generate in rent and where do people really want to buy at. If it generates $1,000, where would they want to be, for this type of property? So I wasted a lot of time giving these like flip type offers for a while. Sellers were like, no, that's too low. That's too low. And so I later, after speaking with other buyers and also other wholesalers, I realized, okay, I'm offering too low. Yep. I'm not making the right type of offer.
Do you think that's the best way to do your due diligence when you're looking at a market? Do you think it's just speaking with people that are being successful in there and seeing what's working for them, or are you relying on like data from certain data providers that show you cash buyers and what they're buying? Like, how do you know? You talked about reverse engineering. How do you know what buyers are buying in that area?
So that is a great question. You can use a method of both, of talking to people and also using data providers. So I use ListSource. I'll say ListSource quite a bit here.
Sure.
And I will pull a list on ListSource. First thing I want to know is within the county or just like the metro area of that county, is there at least 1 million people in the population? If there's not 1 million in at least the metro, not necessarily within the county, but if they call it like Oklahoma City as Oklahoma City Metro, it might be a market that's a little small. Try to get to at least 1 million.
Okay.
Because what I found is then I just run out of people to market to quicker.
Yeah.
So I start with population and then I go, okay, how many absentee owned purchases are there? Well, we figure that out by going to ListSource, and that's super easy. Just you can pull a list of absentee purchases within the last 6 months. And what's that number look like? Is it 300 out of, and then you kind of look at the population and you're like, it's only 300. That seems low. Or is it like 1,200? Or is it like 5,000? And that kind of gauges, how much activity is going on in that area.
Yep.
If you want to take it a next step, you buy that list. And then you look at the buyers and you organize, the list by zip codes, and you say, okay, actually in ListSource, you don't have to buy the list to do this, but there is a way to look at the zip codes and figure out who's buying or how many purchases are in each zip code for another day.
Yep.
But looking at the main zip codes, going, okay, they're all central in this area, stay out of that area. You kind of figure out where are the areas people are buying. And ListSource, you could even pull like square footage of the property. These are extras. You have to add them in, but you can pull detailed property data, and then you can sort of see like what prices are they buying at. And that all that data, it helps you reverse engineer and get a plan and decide if this is the place for you. Other things that help are then speaking to people there. So go on Facebook, find the local RIA's Facebook forum, get on Wholesale Inc. and say, hey, is there any wholesalers out in Minneapolis, for example? And talk to people and ask them, how many deals are you doing? And if you say, is it competitive? Everybody's going to say it's competitive. Okay. Like across the board. I've like heard that 1 million times. So that question is almost like irrelevant.
Right.
But talking to people, okay, what kind of buyers do you sell to? And from there, once you really feel like you've got a market you really like, I would suggest getting a JV partner. And what a JV partner, what I mean by that is another wholesaler that's decently active in the area and that you can give your leads to, and you guys split the wholesale fee if they're able to move the deal.
Got it. Love it.
And
So do you JV all of your deals?
No, I used to.
Okay.
So when you're starting a virtual market, don't even waste any time. Just find a JV partner.
Yep.
You can maybe have 2 if you want. Maybe 3. I know people that have had multiple, and negotiate, how it's going to work, how the relationship's going to work, and say, listen, I'm just getting into virtual wholesaling. The benefits to you is I'm just going to give you contracts. When I get a contract, here you go. And it's free money. You send it out to your buyers list, call some buyers, try to lock it up. They'll also be responsible for taking photos of the property, meeting the seller face to face and say, oh yeah, I work with Lauren, to play that so it looks cohesive to the seller. And from there, I usually negotiate a 70-30 split. I get 70 because my marketing budget.
Sure.
So that pays for the marketing for the deal. So for them, it's free money. And then I always say up front, I say, listen, let's get this out of the way, because there's probably going to be a point where we're not going to work together anymore because I've gotten familiar with the market. I've built my own buyers list. I might even hire like an employee or whatever, and I just want to put it out there that, this isn't like a forever thing, but it's probably good for 25 grand this year for you or more, depending on how long you work and how much you sell and how well we do. So usually they won't turn that away. I love co-wholesaling. I am super co-wholesale friendly. I always tell people, I put on my marketing, go ahead, send this to your buyers if you want and add your fee on top, or we'll work a split if you want. So most people will be totally stoked to do that with you. I've
100%.
never had anybody, I've never had anyone say no to that.
Yeah, when people approach us to help them sell the deals, if they were to tell me 30%, I'd be like, oh, all day. Because I know Billy Bill, my disposition manager, is going to sell it for the most possible, and I know that we're going to get more than they ever expected. So it's a no-brainer. You know what I mean? All day long, and we've got a robust and healthy buyer base, so it's just makes sense.
Yeah. It's a great relationship for them. So I would say you start there, but on the back end, you are working towards, having your own buyers list and your own presence there. And that is what I did. I eventually, worked my own buyers list. I worked to have my own presence there, and I organically was able to afford having, a full-time employee there. You don't even have to get a full-time employee. You can get what I like to call them runners. So a runner is just someone to run errands for you. Yep. They look, they look nice. They're presentable. They meet sellers. They get, say a seller's elderly and doesn't have internet, and so they need to drop off a contract. They go run that errand, drop off a contract, and you pay them $15-20 an hour. Mm-hmm. And then that person, if they're good enough, that might end up being where they're kind of your all around boots on ground person. And people like that, you can find them on Craigslist or I forget that other one I use, one of those job boards, or realtors, like a realtor who's kind of struggling a little bit, and they're getting started in real estate. They could use the extra money and work for you 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week. That's a perfect person to be a runner for you. And you could even use your JV and your runner, you kind of overlap for a while. We're at a point right now where we don't really need JV partners as much anymore. When we have a property that we're just having a tough time moving, we're always hey, our JV partners are on our buyers list. They know they can bring in a buyer. And so we might say, hey guys, haven't moved this one yet. Do you have anyone interested? And we go from there, but it's less now.
Incredible. I love it. It's interesting that you mentioned finding those boots on the ground guys or those runners on Craigslist. What we've been doing, because we do a lot of land deals too, is we put a post for $50 to $70 on Craigslist. And some of these, people, we get a ton of messages, and we look through the ones, and then we find somebody that we really like, that looks reliable, that has, gives us a little bit of background. And we send these people to go pick up contracts. We send them to, just go and be friendly to the sellers. And they're great. These are just natural, gregarious people that are, expressives out there that love everybody. And it works out really well. Yeah, and it's $70. You know what I mean? It's crazy what you can get. And then if you get somebody like that on your staff that can work with you if you're in a virtual market, then you've got boots on the ground to where you can run everything virtually, which is incredible. But one thing I want to switch tracks a little bit here, because one of the things that I really like about your business mind, and this is for everybody out there, is Lauren doesn't Lauren uses what works. She looks for what works, and if something doesn't work, she gets rid of it and replaces it with what works. So we talked 2.5 years ago about TTP. You were doing mail, you were crushing it with mail, you were doing other things, you were crushing it, and then about 1.5 years ago you came and you're like, okay, it's time to TTP. And since then, I mean, it's worked out unbelievable for you, right?
100%. Yeah. And it's what I wanted to focus on going forward. It's funny. I used to buy direct mail. Like I would buy postcards in bulk to save money. I have I think at 90,000 postcards just waiting at my postcard company for the last year. Yep. This credit balance. And they keep bugging me. When do you want to send them? When do you want to send them? And I'm like, I don't want to, honestly, because I still have to pay for postage. Yep. And it's so expensive, and I'm doing better with TTP. I mean, honestly, the cost per deal is much better. Yep. So yeah, I think the benefits with what I felt like with TTP was you're not just waiting around for a seller to come to you. It really is it's nice to be more proactive instead of reactive. I always use the example of me, for example, right now I'm looking to paint this place. I just rented this place and it's this awful green color, which you can see behind me. And I've wanted to paint. I've been wanting to paint. I keep calling different painters, and the one guy I usually use, he was too much. He, quoted me too much. And I was like, can't just a painter just come up to me right now? Because if they did, I probably would have jumped on it. If they gave a reasonable price, jumped on it faster, but I kind of just gave up and was I didn't like Ed's price. I don't feel like calling anyone really. If somebody came up to me and was like, hey, by the way, I'm painting houses in the neighborhood, I'll offer you a good deal. I would have been like, yeah, come this weekend. But I just haven't because I'm busy, right. And that's how sellers are. A lot of sellers have it in their mind to sell a property. It's either sitting vacant or they have this horrible tenant in it, or they have a freeloading family member and it's really awkward and they don't want to kick the person out, but they kind of need the money. And then it's they just get this call and and it's oh, actually, yeah, you know what? And then they could tell their freeloading family member, I wasn't thinking of selling, but she called me and she's buying houses in the area. So it's it creates deals out of thin air, really. Yep. So I like it.
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
I'm a big fan. So do you have, let's dig in. You've done 40 deals this year. Is there one specifically that stands out that we can talk about and break down on this? Because it's real important to break down actual results. Do you have one that kind of sticks out that we can ring this bell and make everybody excited and really understand how this works in real life?
Oh God, when you do that many, I don't feel like I have one that stands out. I'm not sure, and I wasn't expecting that question.
Let's do this. Of the 40 that you've done, what income does that equate to you so far this year?
Let me look. I'm let me look. That's gonna
putting
take
you
me too
on
long.
The spot. That's
my average. Let's just say you're putting me on the spot, but my average wholesale fee is about $10,000.
Okay. So 400,000 this year.
Gross, though. Gross. Yeah. Gross.
I get it. But I mean, your business from picking up the phone and talking to people is about 400,000.
Right. Yeah.
I was just trying to. I just wanted to ring the bell, so I was just trying to get you
to
the point where you give me something to ring the bell.
No, when it comes to 40, I'm I don't know a specific one that stood out because it's just a bunch of junk.
You're virtual. You virtual guys are so crazy. It's just checks in your account. You don't even know where these properties were, what the deal was, what list.
I do stay pretty uninvolved too. I have acquisition side and disposition, so I'm in charge. My job is just marketing and networking and seeing what works. So I spend a lot of my time just talking to guys like you. Yep. Hey guys, what's working for you now? And then implementing it in my business, and then checking the results and making sure my acquisitions team is actually working the leads I'm bringing in, looking at the leads that come in. How many do we have? I'm just doing KPIs all day. That's my main job. So
if somebody wants to reach out to you, is it better to send you a message through Instagram or something? How do people follow you?
Honestly, I'm on Instagram, so you can DM me. It's This Mom Flips, and or you can email me. I don't know if you do show notes or what do you do there, but
we do show notes.
yeah, emailing me is good too. Lauren@tmfrealestate.com. That stands for This Mom Flips.
I love that.
Yeah, reach out to me and love to chat.
And you're a single mom of 2 little girls.
Yeah, 6 and 8.
So I mean, having your schedule available is number one.
100%. And it's great. I mean, I can pick them up after school, and that's what I do. That was a big thing for me growing up. My mom worked corporate world, and I never saw her. And, I thought, God, I got to do it different. Like, I got to be able to pick up my kids from school. So it's an honor. It's great to be able to, pick up the kids from school. And this business has afforded me that.
Yep.
I'll say this business isn't always easy. It's very tough, and people underestimate that. And it's stressful, there's definite stresses. But just the fact that freedom of schedule, that's always been my motivation. That is still it's still in front of me. Like, you could work for a company, like, it's always there. I keep that in my head. Like, if you don't hustle today, like, you're going to have to get a job.
Yep.
And you don't want to do that. Right. So keep working. Yeah. So.
Incredible. Incredible. Well, thank you, Lauren, for joining us. Reach out to her if you guys are thinking about a virtual strategy, or if you're in the Orange County area, definitely reach out. She is a phenomenal resource. And for all you crazy proactive people out there that is looking to join the most proactive group in real estate investing, it is the TTP program. Go to wholesalinginc.com/TTP. Check out the page, see what the program's about. Go check out all the testimonials. If it feels good in your gut, sign up for a call. Join Lauren and so many other incredible professionals around the country that have implemented TTP in their business and been wildly successful. So check that out. Lauren, thank you again for joining us. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye. Thanks for having me, Brent.
You got it. And everybody out there, thank you for listening. And I encourage you always to talk to people. Till next time. Love you. See ya.